Here's Ozma Part 4. Everyone's like, Ozma, listen, this has got to be a trap. And she's like, I know, but it's probably the best chance that we're going to have to save the royal family of Ev, so I have to do it. So she goes into the palace and chooses 11 different objects that she thinks might be the royal family transformed. Now, between the green magic carpet that we saw earlier with them getting across the desert, and also this palace that has so many ornaments, but you can only touch a couple specific things or you'll be trapped forever. There's a lot of stuff in this book that's feeling like Aladdin. She chooses 10 items that are unfortunately not members of the royal family, and so she only has one more chance to save herself from being turned into an ornament. So, out of despair, she decides to close her eyes, just choose something random, and she fails. It is not a member of the royal family, and she is turned into an ornamental grasshopper. And so the Tin Woodman, since he's commanding the royal army, decides to go in after her. He also gets turned into an ornament, and it gets turned into something that the Gnome King thinks is very funny. No one else can see what's going on inside the palace this whole time. They're all just waiting in the throne room. So one by one, they go in after the Tin Woodman. All of the 27 soldiers start going. Now, I don't know if I've talked about this before. The 27 soldiers are 26 officers of various ranks, from generals to, lieutenants, major, whatever. And then it goes all the way down to one private that they all command. It's pretty funny for sure, but I also feel like this represents how, if you take a company like McDonald's or, really any company, right? It's the people who are the lowest ranking kind of minimum wage workers or entry-level workers who are ultimately doing the work that is making them the most money, right? Even if it's not individually, collectively, they are doing the work that makes the most money. So while these companies prioritize paying all of the executives more, I think this just goes to show that, hey, if we take away all of the actual workers, we have a pretty effective company on our hands. Anyway, one of these soldiers that's going to be going first chickens out and says, no way, I'm not going, I'm just going home, I'm gonna leave. But then it turns out that they really don't have the option to just cut their losses, because the Gnome King says if you don't go into the palace and make your guesses, then you will get taken down to the furnaces and tossed in there. So ultimately we lose all of the soldiers. They all get turned into ornaments. No one has chosen a single ornament correctly yet. And at this point, we get to the very end of the day. It's like midnight. They can't see the sun or anything, but the Gnome King is tired. So they decide to go to bed, resume the next day. Now, the only people left at this point are the Cowardly Lion, the Hungry Tiger, Scarecrow, TikTok, Dorothy, Billina, and the Sawhorse, okay? And they end up deciding, for whatever reason, the Hungry Tiger and the Cowardly Lion and the Sawhorse aren't going to make any guesses, and I guess neither is Billina. But they end up going to their own rooms, except that Billina got tired a little earlier and curled up under the Gnome King's throne. And while she's under there, she hears the king talking to his chief steward, and the chief steward is, I guess, trying to take the Gnome King's place. He keeps insulting him and saying what a better king he would make. And the Gnome King talks about how they're never going to guess that the royal family are all turned into royal purple ornaments. And everyone from Oz that has come through so far has been turned into a green ornament, except for the Tin Woodman that was turned into something very silly. And he also says that the next day, he's thinking that he's going to turn the Scarecrow and TikTok into solid gold ornaments. One thing I forgot to mention, by the way, is that as one ornament is added, the next person is able to make one more guess. So we're up to like a couple dozen guesses now at this point because there's so many ornaments. So each person who goes through technically has the potential to rescue every single person. TikTok goes in, makes all of his guesses except for one, but then he winds down because Dorothy forgot to wind him up in the morning. So she says, okay, I'm gonna go next, and I will just go in, wind him up, let him make his final guess, and then I will make mine. And so she winds him back up, he makes his final guess, and it's wrong, and he's turned into an ornament, and Dorothy's not able to see which one he turned into. And so Dorothy goes to make her guesses and ends up choosing one correctly. She finds one of the princes of Ev who was turned into a little purple kitten. So she's like, great, I'm not gonna be an ornament, I'm safe. She makes the rest of her guesses, they're all wrong, but she does leave the palace with one of the princes of Ev. The king of Ev is furious, so he's trying to kind of rush the scarecrow, who's the last person, back in. But then Belina from under the throne is like, oh, I just laid my morning egg. And he's like, eggs are poisonous because that is something that comes from above ground and we're below ground, so I guess it's poisonous, I don't know. And so he's like, you have to get that out from under the throne, get that out of here right now. And so the scarecrow goes to retrieve it from under the throne because he's like, oh, I have one of her other old eggs in my pocket, I'll just start a little collection. And Belina's like, wait, Gnome King, he will only get it out from under the throne and get it out of here if you let me go make my guesses with everyone else. And he's like, why would you want to do that? You're just a stupid chicken. And she just kind of plays dumb and is like, well, that's what I want. So he's like, okay, great. I'll get one extra ornament to replace the Prince of Ev that I just lost. Perfect. No problem. So the scarecrow goes in, makes his guesses, fails, turns into an ornament. And finally it is Belina's turn. She goes in, she frees everybody, all the Kingdom of Ev people first, and then everybody from Oz, except that she's not able to find the Tin Woodman. They decide with their whole group of people that they're gonna go out into the throne room and demand that the Gnome King give the Tin Woodman back now that they have everybody again. And they're all saying, well, clearly we were set up, this was a trap, he wasn't playing fair, which, I mean, the Gnome King is clearly not a good guy, but like, if anything, he made it easier by categorizing them all by color. It's not like they were hidden, you know, they just were unlucky. Anyway, they go back out into the throne room and the Gnome King has assembled his entire army because he is so upset that they foiled his plan. So the 26 officers command the one private to attack, and he does, and knocks about 10 of the gnome soldiers over, but his spear is not able to go through their armor, so they're just knocked down, they're not dead. The Gnome King takes a big axe and chops off the end of his spear, so it's kind of useless now. It's not looking good for everybody here, but the scarecrow remembers, I have these eggs that are apparently poisonous to him. So he throws one of the eggs and hits the Gnome King right in the left eye. And the Gnome King screams, he's blinded in that eye, he tells everyone to run for their lives, his whole army scatters, and then the scarecrow throws the other egg and hits him in the other eye, so now he's blinded and just kind of screeching. Pretty gnarly. Finally, Dorothy steals his magic belt that allows him to do all of these transformations, and it seems, at least for now, that the Gnome King has been defeated. That's where we're going to leave off for today. See you tomorrow for the end of Ozma of Oz.